And this story caught my attention coming out of Reuters on Nigeria, that the country's approved a 15% import duty on petrol and diesel. And the government's trying to protect its investments in domestic refining and trying to prevent an influx of cheaper fuel. Of course, the Dangote refinery has seen a major shakeup of the way that Nigerians consume and produce oil, and the measure is part of a broader fiscal reform package aimed at boosting non-oil revenues ahead of the planned tax changes that are taking place next year, and it follows last year's removal of fuel subsidies and foreign exchange control. And so the presidential memo that Reuters has seen says that this reform will accelerate Nigeria's path towards fuel self-sufficiency, protect consumers and investors alike, and stabilize the downstream petroleum market. Because, of course, one of the ironies before the Dangote refinery was that there were these massive fuel shortages in Nigeria. It was impossible to fathom how a country can be such a major oil producer and then people are still lining up for kilometers in order to access petrol as well as diesel. And of course, in Nigeria, those were often needed for generators. And so people just had had to queue in a major oil producer. And so it will be very interesting to see how this affects Nigerians. And of course, Nigerians having been used to fuel subsidies, and then having those removed, and now also cheaper fuel imports and what that will do. But this does seem to be part of Nigeria's long-term plan to try and improve domestic production of fuel, at least industrialization of fuel, and try to improve their own domestic resource mobilization, their own tax ability to collect taxes. So that's happening in Nigeria. We'll go to this story now, switching our focus to Dischem's interim results, with the retailer announcing the interim results for the 6 month ending 31st of August, and a revenue growth of 8.7% and an increase in headline earnings per share. That's the major marker of profit in South Africa of 9%. And we're joined now by Marais, who's the Dischem CEO, to take us through this latest figures. Good evening, Ruis. Good to have you on the show again.
Thank you. Good evening.
So Dischem reported a strong set of numbers, and there was a lot of focus on wholesale revenue this half year. Just talk to us a little bit more about how that was achieved.
So a very strong wholesale revenue number. I mean, wholesale revenue has for the last 4 years really performed nicely. Really as a combination of our wholesale business accessing more and more doors in South Africa. So what I mean by that is essentially servicing more and more independent pharmacies, and then some of those independent pharmacies converting to the Local Choice, which is a franchise brand we own, and on that conversion, more support from that same said independent pharmacy. And that has been kind of those have been the structural drivers behind the success of wholesale for the last 4 to 5 years, and it continues in a very positive way.
Okay, and what contributed most to this? Was it volume growth? Was there cost disciplines?
In relation to wholesale, specifically volume growth, that cost base is relatively static, and you're starting to leverage the fixed cost base that is the invested infrastructure in wholesale. Obviously, from a retail perspective, slightly different. A retail top line number closer to 9%. That was a combination of volume and price inflation. We had strong like-for-like numbers, which were reflective of the maturity profile of the new stores we've added as we continue our ambition of rolling out space in the country.
So the group then invested 130 million rand into ecosystem initiatives such as Dischem Life. How do you measure the return on that kind of investment?
So those returns are much longer term. I think if you think about both Dischem Life, which has got a traditional investment in a life business, and it's got a J-curve, so it incurs losses before it gets profitable, exactly like our Dischem Health business when we brought it into the market. We expect the return profile associated with those investments to come within the short and medium term. And then Bigly, which is our innovation hub, is chasing down specific commercial opportunities. Currently from a market and a consumer perspective, what you would have seen Bigly achieve and drop into our stores is, for example, our new Better Rewards program, And the return profile associated with that Better Rewards program is actually shared between our normal traditional retail business and the Innovation Hub, which is Biggie.
So we spoke to you about the Better Rewards program, and that, would have come online only after these results have been reported. But have you seen, it's been a couple of weeks since it was implemented, have you seen any changes?
Yeah, so being 9 days since we've launched Better Rewards, it's very early on, but certainly metrically delivering higher than expectations. So, interestingly enough, loyalty acquisition, so that's acquisition of individuals who are now Better Reward members who had never shopped with the brand, is up 250% day on day, which is a very interesting number. That implies that we're getting new customers to the brand, so fundamentally important. And then we're seeing Better Reward volume growth, so the products that are on Better Rewards on the program kind of skyrocketing volumes. Actually, it's actually a little unbelievable the kind of growth that we're seeing in those products very early on, as I said, but really talks to the success of like a very deep value-based kind of instant discount program which sits on top of all promotional pricing.
Okay, so a strong interest there. Let's go back to the interim results then. Talking about plans to launch 32 new pharmacy stores. And that's a big plan ahead, of course. Any specific areas that you're focusing on?
Specifically, we can obviously talk to the details, but I think principally we invest in areas that we're underrepresented. So, a lot of space going into Cape Town or Western Cape and KZN. We're well represented in Gauteng, so, we carry on, representing Gauteng and investing in Gauteng, but certainly over-indexed into the Western Cape, Eastern Cape, KZN, where we've been underrepresented previously.
Okay, and also talking about the store of the future. So what does that mean for shoppers going into a Dischem store of the future? What can they expect to see?
So I think if we think about our physical space, the physical space really existed as the brand being a retail pharmacy. We have ambitions of being an integrated healthcare provider. And what does that mean for our physical stores and what are consumers expected to see? I think that evolution is something that the store of the future intends to solve. It will be a much more omni-channel based experience. So in the way that you walk into a store, there will be digital and physical in type of interactions. There will be a focus on the delivery of healthcare services, so specific clinic, pharmacy as you're normally used to, but other which are financial services products. There will be a focus and a focal point on the way that we think about rewards, because ultimately rewards allows you to unlock value within the ecosystem. And potentially in some of the categories that we want to captain and we want to dominate in, there will not only be product, but there will be potentially some sort of experience in store, that associates with product, which is important retailing principles going forward and certainly what we've seen in global trends.
How then, talking about being an integrated healthcare provider, also having the Dischem healthcare coverage as well as life coverage, how do you balance that between a retail store and then a financial services provider? Because, of course, it's quite an interesting space to be in.
Sure, I think the decisions around how you structure it are important. So it's very difficult to do that if you're going to commercially partner with someone to play that, because naturally that doesn't become a priority, it becomes ancillary. So our decisions to invest in those businesses and ensure that we chase the return downs structurally are the first important things. And then to go and brand the products that you're creating. So as soon as you put a Dischem brand on a health or life product, it forces you to stay true to the brand principles in the way that those products are designed. And it naturally means that kind of these two worlds kind of evolve into one another as we build the ecosystem. So, I could talk a lot about how we've practically and operationally done it, but those are the two guiding principles in the way that we've put these products into the market.
So under the Dischem umbrella, the Dischem branding?
Yes, absolutely. So Dischem Health and Dischem Life sit under the Dischem branding, and they will continue to evolve, and you'll see flexible health funding solutions come to market. You'll see different versions within the life space. As we think about ourselves as both the funder and the provider.
Okay. So are you concerned at all, Ruis, about competition from SPAR setting up their own pharmacy unit?
Look, I guess the competition has always existed. People look at pharmacy and see pharmacy as an opportunity. Whether it's food grocers, whether it's potential insurers who want to integrate backwards into the provider side of the chain. The reality is that is not abnormal for ourselves or Clicks to deal with that type of competition. But when you look at market share coverage, And between ourselves and Clicks, we have close on 53% of the pharmacy market in South Africa, and no one else has got anything north of 2.5%. So, competition is good. It ensures that you stay on point in terms of what you're trying to deliver. It certainly highlights the importance for us to continue to invest and own the script. But other than that, we've dealt with competition as we do every single year.
Okay, so it's an interesting space, of course, to see new entrants. And out of interest then, do you foresee any kind of changes around consumers? We talk about it all the time on the show, consumers being under pressure. Your interim results talk about consumers being under pressure. Do you foresee any kind of change in the next 6 months?
No, I don't. I think structurally consumers remain under pressure. I think that's also potentially the reason we're seeing such good returns within the Better Reward program, because it is a program that kind of changes the price point of commoditized products in South Africa. But I mean, it would be disingenuous if we thought that the consumer would structurally change over 6 months. I think, consumers are value conscious, they're under pressure, and they will continue to remain under pressure for the next short term, until there are fundamental structural changes in the economy.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing. Thanks so much, Marais, the Dischem CEO, talking to us about the company's interim results for the 6 months ending the end of August.